guys. Welcome. Can I ask you guys at the back again to move forward? So I just create a bit more of a community here and get a little bit easier to discuss. So come on down. I'm always interested in your thoughts. So don't be shy. Come down to the front, and we haven't got too many people, which is probably a good thing. So come on down the front. Come on down. Don't be shy. There's plenty of seats down the front. I don't bite. I'll be very gentle today. Okay. I feel a bit like Gordon Brown today. I don't know if any of you've seen the paper today with Gordon Brown. He was wearing one of these mics, and they've got an election going on in the UK, and he was meeting some people and having these sort of chats with the public, and then they forgot to switch his mic off when he went back to his car. And then he said a few things which he shouldn't have said privately in the car, saying, "What the hell did you put me together with that woman?" Discussing something or other, and that got into the media, and so he then had to go back to this old lady's house and apologise for about 45 minutes for calling her a bigot. So I better be careful what I say, because eye lecture is on, and I've got lots of students listening to me away from here. Now, let's get that other screen on. Yeah, so welcome all those students who are listening online. I think there's probably a few campus students who are listening to this as well, probably a few days before the exam, would be my guess. But anyway, what I want to talk about today is sustainability and insurance or risk transfer. In my sort of reasonably short career, there's been huge changes in the risk management industry, and particularly in business, with sustainability. About 15 years ago, no one really talked about sustainability, but now there's a lot of corporations which have whole departments allocated to sustainability. There's sustainability reports being generated by organisations. And now within this enterprise risk course, we're only just sort of touching on sustainability issues, but there would be nothing stopping a whole unit being allocated to sustainability. It's one of those emerging topics which covers a lot of breadth as well. So what I want to do really is just give you an introduction, give you a snapshot as to what sustainability means in organisations today, so that when you get out into the workplace and get yourselves perhaps more involved, or maybe you're already involved in corporate affairs and corporate operations, you've got a feeling of what this is all about. Does anybody here want to hazard a guess as to sort of sustainability? What does sustainability mean to you? Anybody want to? What words come into your mind when you think about somebody talks about sustainability? Anybody? Sorry. just switch this one on. Try that again.
Continue to live or continue to do something.
Continue to lead. Yeah, continue to lead. So it's about sort of continuing doing something. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Something that's renewable. Yeah. Okay. So when you say renewable, something that doesn't wear out, or
which means you cannot finish them off. It can be continuing, be used, and can get to other values.
Okay. Do you want to give us a quick example? What do you mean? Give us an example. I can think of some, but
yeah, I think for example, if we drink water every day, but if we get the fresh water from the sea, this is kind of sustainability.
Okay, so water is a renewable source. Yeah. Okay. Great. Anybody else? Any thoughts to sustainability? Yeah.
I bought a bottle of juice, but after I finish the juice, I just keep the boat to take the water.
Okay, so you're going to use your bottle again for something else. Okay, great. So it's about reducing waste. You're thinking so that when a bottle's made, it's for orange, and then it's used for something else afterwards. And yeah, okay. What about for a corporation? Anybody got any thoughts in terms of a corporation? Okay, well, I'll give somebody else a chance. Anybody thoughts in terms of the corporate life? You're sitting in the executive suite, and someone says sustainability. What kind of thoughts would you be thinking of in terms of corporations? Anybody? Yeah, at the back. I have to get you to sit down the front because you're always you're keeping me very fit. Okay. That's all right. I need the exercise.
Yeah, I mean, sustainability in the sense of a corporate environment, I think it takes into account programs that support ongoing operations of the organizations.
Okay.
With respect to its internal and external environment.
Okay. Any examples? What sort of programs come to mind?
Talking in within the scope of risk management, we are looking at risk management programs and policies that support the operations and that cohere with the overall objectives of the organization. Okay. Something that can carry the organization into the future.
Okay, yeah. So it's a long-term view for the organisation. Yeah, that's I think that's it. What's going on here? What we're thinking of in terms of a business is making that business sustainable. As you probably noticed in the press in recent times, in the last 18 months, with the GFC, there's been a lot of unsustainable businesses sort of occurring in the financial sector. So they've been looking at short-term gains at the expense of long-term sustainability, as it were. So we've got organisations who are just looking to make a quick dollar, but not really thinking about their long-term sustainability. So that's sort of one sort of aspect of it. Now, really, I mean, it's a bit of a buzzword. From my experience, sustainability, it sort of encapsulates almost everything that goes on in an organisation.
I think
it's too close together, you think? Yeah, something's rubbing on something. So, okay, my apologies. Let's see. This is one definition of sustainability that's been offered. I forget who's provided this one, but I think there's a loose wire or something somewhere. Improving the quality of human life while living within the carrying capacity of the supporting ecosystem. So this is a very sort of big picture sort of thing about sustainability. But when we take that back to the corporation, let's muddle up here. It really has been divided generally into about 3 different areas, which is associated with factors of the environment. Now people mention the environment, your plastic bottle, and making sure there's sort of minimum waste there. Social, how the relationship organisations have with the community is part of sustainability. So the organisation is a sustainable part of that community. And the last one is economic. And in general, what organisations have focused on in the past in their reporting is economic indicators or economic performance. So really we're taking that economic sort of viewpoint and stretching it out to much longer term or much wider issues. I mean, let's think about in terms of financial reporting. Who do you think would be most interested in financial reporting? So if we think about the economic aspect of sustainability, any thoughts as to who would be interested in financial reporting of organisations? Speak up. Shareholders, investors. They're going to be the most interested. And as we've discussed already, the relationship with organisations is really looking after the shareholders, providing the shareholders with value. Now, what we're moving on to here with sustainability is moving beyond that. So we get into a terminology of stakeholder. Now, stakeholder is a category of people who have relationships with organisations who are not necessarily just financially connected to the organisation. And I guess this is another sort of message as to where sustainability reporting is coming through, in terms of we're now developing relationships with stakeholders who are not just have a financial stake in the organisation or shareholders in that organisation. Stakeholders, who do they include? Well, typically your investors, your employees have a stake in the future of the company and the sustainability of the company. Suppliers, communities and government, and joint venture partners, regulatory bodies, local authorities, trade unions, media organisations, non-government organisations, industry bodies, academic community, opinion leaders, business social commentators. So what you can see is there's a wide range of people who have an interest in how an organisation is managed and how an organisation is run. So from a leadership perspective, if you're on the board of directors or you're an executive within an organisation, we're noticing the shift from purely focusing on investors and shareholders to looking to understand the needs and expectations of that wider stakeholder community. Now there's a couple of issues, I suppose, which then are created when you start broadening your relationships. There may be some conflicting factors associated with maintaining those relationships. Anybody think of any conflicting factors that might occur within stakeholder relationships? Any thoughts that where as on the board or an executive you've got one group of people with one interest and perhaps another group of people who are still stakeholders but maybe have another set of interests? Anybody want to hazard a guess, as give an example perhaps that you've come across? Yeah.
Ford Motor Company in Geelong, they want to support the community, but they also want to support their shareholders. So we're laying off staff. They're kind of affecting the community, but you're benefiting the shareholders.
Exactly. So there's a conflict of interest with, if you lay off a lot of staff, that's going to impact the community. People are going to be unemployed. That's not good for the community. But on the other hand, you'll be saving some money, perhaps improving efficiency in the organisation. That's going to be better for the shareholders. So that's an excellent point. Anybody got any other examples of where stakeholder interests might be different from maybe shareholder interests?
Agency theory.
Agency theory. Yeah. Okay. What about it's just a practical example of a relationship, sort of.
Yeah, management stand for themselves, and if you do something good for themselves and the interest of them, but if you do something wrong for the shareholders, for example, if you do invest in risky projects, it's very it's not good for the shareholders.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I'm looking for an example of maybe a stakeholder. We had an example that the employees are a stakeholder, and maybe there's a conflict of interest what the stakeholders want compared to perhaps the investors. Yeah. Any thoughts on that? Let me just get the mic over here.
There will be a conflict between the creditors and the shareholders, because when company makes money, the money will go to creditor first, then the shareholders. So if the creditor set up the interest rate too high, it's very, very harmful to the shareholders.
Okay, yeah, that's another. So creditors are a stakeholder in the organisation, and potentially a conflict there between the investors. Yeah. Any others? What about environmental issues? Anybody got any thoughts? Yeah.
Shareholders are purely profit-oriented.
Hang on. Try that again.
Shareholders are purely profit-oriented, and stakeholders like NGOs, they look after environment and community welfare, etc. So there is a conflict because NGOs are not non-profit organizations.
Okay, yeah. So can you give me a more specific example, perhaps, from real life? Really putting the pressure on you now. You wanted to sit up the back, didn't you, really? No? Okay, what about, say we're building a new factory somewhere. So there's a community group who's very interested in this wetland area where we want to build the factory. What are your thoughts on that? No thoughts? Okay. So potentially you could have a stakeholder group, like an environmental group, an NGO, a non-government organisation, yeah, and they've got their sort of agenda of protecting the wetlands. But then you as a business, you go, well, this is really prime, warehouse location. If we set our warehouse up here, we can really cut our transport costs, and the local government is offering some very good grants or loan terms if we build here and create some jobs in this area. So potentially there is again sort of a conflict between environmental non-government organisation and the shareholders. Yeah. So as you can see, there's another.
Consider the environmental issues in relation to the communities within which companies operate in. Like, for instance, the company pollutes the rivers and emit all the greenhouse gas emissions.
Absolutely, yeah.
The conflict of interest with the communities where they're expecting them to practice more efficient and environmentally friendly practices versus the operational methods which are used by the companies to increase their profits, regardless of the effects on the environment.
That's exactly it. So we've got a conflict of interest here between the company wanting to make some money, but they don't really put a value on the pollution of the environment, and so the local community can be impacted because their environment gets polluted. So we've got a really interesting situation where we want to keep all these stakeholders happy. But whatever we do, we're probably going to piss somebody off. We're going to upset somebody, with whatever we do, and it's very difficult sometimes to manage that. But why do you think it might be important to take into consideration some of these stakeholder interests? Why don't we just say, well, stuff your river in your local community. If we can put raw sewage into your river, we don't have to build a water treatment plant. There's no legal requirement to build a water treatment plant. We'll just be making as much money as we can. Why do you think companies are now taking an interest in stakeholder issues, even though there's this conflict of interest. Anybody got any thoughts as to why bother talking to the local community? Yeah, I'm going to count how many times I walk up here and see. Probably a couple of Ks by the end of the night. Yeah.
How sustainable is it for the organizations to keep operating in ways that are in conflict with other people's interests? Because at the end of it all, those people who they're in conflict with are the people who at the end of the day will determine the destiny of the organization as it is. So, like for example, in the case of a company polluting, say, a river community, you look at how long they are going to keep doing that with the community accepting all those things happening without them actually rioting against the company doing all that sort of thing,
yeah,
or damage to the environment.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so there's some additional benefits to keep the community happy and not just do everything that's profit related. Yeah, I've got another comment over here. Hang on. You can hear me walking around tonight.
To build reputation.
Hold on to that.
To build reputation.
Okay, give me an example.
Yeah, let's say those, like, back to your example there. Talk about those environmentalists here. Probably take these NGOs into consideration here. We're taking care about the environment, so it shows a sense of caring, and use this sense of caring as a marketing to approach the market.
Yep. Yeah. Prevent lawsuits. Okay, yeah, that's yeah. I mean, there's regulations as well. I mean, obviously legal requirements and others. And yeah, but I think your first point is spot on. You know, we're interested in developing good relationships with the community. You know, we can build our brand if we're showing that we're doing the right thing around the place. So that's one aspect of it. Now there's so it can provide value. I guess this is the bottom line. Sustainability can provide value to an organisation which may go beyond pure profit and price-driven value. So we're coming into sort of brand awareness and other sorts of value that the company can offer. Now there's a I'm not sure if I've listed it somewhere in the notes, but there's a little video I've linked. Maybe it's at the back of the notes. With the CEO of a large carpet company, and he did a presentation on sustainability, and they were using millions of tons of really nasty chemicals, plastics, oils, energy, all of these sorts of things, and someone said, do you realise the impact that making these carpets has on the environment? And they looked into it and they recognised that yes, this is a big impact. And if we can maybe become more environmentally friendly with our carpet manufacturing, then we'll appeal more to our customers, and perhaps our sales would improve. And so they looked into this, and they actually were able to reduce their impact in the environment, but at the same time they were able to create more efficient processes. So they had a sort of a win-win situation, and ended up with actually cutting their costs by becoming more water efficient or more sort of chemical efficient, and also improve the relationship with their market, with their customers from an environmental standpoint. So I guess the message sort of behind this is that yes, there are conflicts of interest between sustainability and meeting shareholder needs. However, there's also value in there, and I think over the last 15 years, organisations have recognised this value, and this is the main reason that they're sort of pushing forward with sustainability. Yeah, these are the three sort of pillars that we've sort of talked about. Typically, people approach it from the perspective of economic, environmental, and community. And here's some of the sort of the, in summary in the notes, in the slide notes, demonstrating transparency. So it's like we're open in terms of what we're wanting to do and how we're doing it. We're creating financial value. Actually, maybe using less water, a lot of in the production process, or using less energy. We're improving reputation. I think someone mentioned that point. We're looking at continuous improvement. Regulatory compliance. I think there was a point there about complying with regulations and actually working with regulatory agencies rather than sort of having an antagonistic approach, a viewpoint with them. Strengthening risk awareness and management. I think somebody mentioned risk management. Encouraging innovation. So this is about, well, how can we do this better? How can we use resources more effectively? So innovation comes out of it. Enhancing management systems and decision making. Raising awareness, motivating, aligning staff, attracting talent. I mean, this is another aspect. If you're out there looking for a job, and the job, is obviously more caring to the community, maybe they've got better sort of environmental policies. Perhaps you're more attracted to that to work for that organisation compared to one which can't offer that. So, attracting long-term capital and financing. Investors and analysts are now actually looking at sustainability indexes. If you were to look at investing in shares, there's some indexes around now for organisations where they look at not only the financial performance but also the environmental performance and social performance, or the sustainability index of that organisation. And it's perceived. I mean, the statistics, I think, are showing that these organisations that have good sustainability policies and procedures are outperforming other organisations in the longer term. So that's something to keep an eye out for. And I guess, the last one's competitive positioning and market differentiation. So, if your brand is identified as one which is able to, be green, then perhaps you'll be more likely to attract customers who are also looking for similar kind of approaches. I mean, you can see examples of this around. I don't know if any of you have sort of been flying recently. Some of the airlines are offering you can buy green credits, or you can offset your carbon emissions, and so here they're offering a sort of a sustainability-based product to attract you. And if your organisation's also got these sorts of values, well, you're more likely to use an airline that can offer this improved environmental performance, I guess. So there's plenty of value out there from sustainability, and I think that's what's made it sort of so interesting. I guess at the end of the day, we've got to keep in mind that the organisation is going to be looking at meeting the needs of its shareholders. So, if there is a conflict of interest between two stakeholder parties, who are one investor and one non-investor, the likelihood is that the organisation is going to push towards the shareholder-based interest. However, how you measure the shareholder interest is another question. How do you weigh up pure financial gain compared to improved brand or awareness or other sort of impacts in the community? So it's not a simple question. Just to give you an idea as to where sustainability reporting has come from, here's it's a graph in terms of the number of Australian companies in the last 15 years, roughly, who've started to include sustainability reports in their offerings. It's generally larger corporations that include these reports, and Australia is probably lagging behind Europe, particularly, who are probably far more environmentally conscious than the US and probably Australia. I'm not sure about Asia, whether you guys have got any experiences in terms of sustainability. Does anybody know if there's any sustainability reporting standards or requirements through Asia? No? I haven't heard of any, but maybe that's something that's something that will be changing soon. One thing to keep in mind when we're looking at sustainability reports, and I'll show an example a little bit later tonight, is that these are not mandatory reports, so they're not required necessarily in the same way that financial accounts or annual reports are required. So they don't have that same sort of requirement. It's an optional thing. So generally organisations that are releasing these reports are doing it because they see value in it in the wider sense that we talked about already. It's not just because there's a requirement that they have to produce these reports. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. So this is probably the reason why it's a gradual increase, and we'll probably over the years probably see that sort of plateauing off as well, where organisations say, well, look, there's no value in it. We're not going to put the effort into putting that together. The other, I think, important part about this sustainability reporting is the way that it's audited and the assurance that surrounds any numbers which are included in this sustainability report. As you can imagine, some of the numbers, I mean, anybody get any ideas of some of the numbers that would be included in the reports? I mean, it could be water usage. We talked about water usage. How much water is this organisation using? You know, how has the amount of water changed over the years? And so that the report can then demonstrate that this organisation is, you know, water saving, takes this sort of environmentally friendly approach. Energy use, you know, how much energy is the organisation using? How much, you know, how much more efficient has it become? What kind of projects are underway to improve environmental performance? All this type of information can be included in the report. The question is, because it doesn't have the same stringent assurance requirements as a financial report, which requires an external auditor to review the report and sign off on it, you have to sort of sometimes guess, you know, or make a judgment as how accurate some of this reporting may or may not be, and how selective the information in the report is. So I think you know, this is a key difference between financial reports and sustainability reports. It's the level of assurance, the level of auditing which goes on behind the scenes, given the, you know, in comparison with the material that's actually included in the report. Now is changing. That's changing in some areas. There's I think it's CPRS, carbon pollution reduction scheme, I think it is, where large emitters or large users of fossil fuels, this is in Australia, have to report their usage. And this has been going on for probably about 3 years now, just right off the top of my head. And they have to report to the government, Department of Environment, Climate Change, federal government, as to their usage of fossil fuels or carbon. And what's actually just happening recently is that there's an audit program being developed by the government, and the government is now going to start going through these large users, auditing the numbers that they're producing in terms of their carbon footprints. So we are seeing a sort of an evolution in sustainability reporting from something that's sort of a little bit ad hoc, very flexible, where we can just put in whatever we feel like putting in, to something that's going to become more rigorous. So I think over the next few years, this sustainability reporting is going to become more, more trustworthy down the track. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, economic performance is one of the pillars. Now, really, what we're talking about, economic performance, is the same as the financial performance of the organisation that you would see in the annual report. The only difference probably is that it's perhaps a little bit more simplistic. It's a lot shorter. It doesn't go in through all the accounting standards and all the accounting details and everything. Really, it's just a snapshot. And I guess we have to think about if you're the people that are putting these sustainability reports together. Think about the audience that's going to be receiving this report. The audience of a sustainability report is going to be one of the stakeholders, not necessarily the shareholders, but the stakeholders. And we talked about the environmental groups, maybe the local communities, the employees, these types of people. They're not accountants. They're not really sort of interested in what type of accounting system has been used to justify everything. They're really just interested in some basic financial information. And so that's generally what's presented in these sustainability reports under the heading of economic performance. So, I mean, I've just listed down here that it's basically the financial results over recent periods and projections of future earnings profitability. So, it's all the sort of financial metrics associated with the performance of the organisation, but not the same detail necessarily as you'd find in a set of financial accounts. The second pillar that is most commonly used is environmental performance. We've touched on carbon footprint. That might be one. Anybody want to suggest any other environmental sort of performance indicators that organisations might want to include? Anybody? Any thoughts? Talked about another one tonight already.
Maybe carbon offsets.
Carbon offsets. Yeah. I mean that's part of the sort of environmental performance tied up with carbon. Yeah. Use of fossil fuels. Yeah. So that was probably going to be included in there. Anything else? Any other? Yeah.
Something like fair working conditions for the community, and also like observing certain, so you're taking advantage and giving minimum wage.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. That will be included in the report, but probably in a different section. We'll come to that one. Probably jump the gun a little bit there. I'm thinking at the moment on environmental performance indicators. So, any other? If you were writing a sustainability report for an organisation and said, well, what are our environmental performance indicators? Any, carbon emissions? Anything else? Water. Right. Amount of water that we're using. I think that's particularly a key issue for a lot of Australian-based organisations with drought issues and how much water these organisations are using. And if you ever get into industry, manufacturing industry, you'd be amazed at how water-intensive a lot of processes are. Any other suggestions? Yeah. Reducing printing, yeah. So the use of paper, yeah. So that could be one. Sorry. Sending e-bills, yeah. So the amount of water, yeah. Paper, yeah. That's a good one. Anything else? Land usage, yeah. So in terms of you're thinking, just give me an example. What kind of things would you measure?
Maybe they are taking place where we live. Maybe they are taking place where we should live.
Okay, where we should live? Yeah. Yeah. So the factory's located in. Yeah, okay. I mean, the land use is probably an interesting one. I mean, maybe cutting trees. Yeah, how we're using the environment. So perhaps are we using the most efficient farming methods? For example, can we're producing more food per hectare compared to something else. So yeah, so the land usage. Many people living on the river. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Excellent. All right. So another one might be what might be waste. How are we managing our waste? I mean, that comes to the sort of ties in with the paper usage as well. How many tons of waste are we using? Other things that are often included, things like discharges into streams or lakes, so how waste materials and chemicals are being handled and processed. Damage to natural resources, so trees and things, where they're being cut down. Are we, how are we impacting on sensitive areas? Another one is noise and other emissions. What are we putting into the atmosphere, into the environment? And how are we, how are we actually measuring it? Do we actually know what we're doing? And this is probably, from my experience, some of the first questions that are asked by organisations to go, well, we don't know how much paper we waste. We don't know how much pollutants we put into the atmosphere. We don't know because no one measures it. We don't have to measure it, so we don't measure it. So often the first part of the process of sustainability is actually starting to measure what we're already doing, rather than trying to change anything. And I think it's a bit of a sort of a life cycle growth curve to say, well, before we can change anything, we've got to know what our performance is now. So that's the first point, and before we can manage it, we have to measure it. The next sort of third and sort of final pillar is social performance. We had some comments about employees, social performance. Anybody got any other thoughts as to what might be indicators of our social performance with sustainability? What might we want to include in the report under social? What kind of stakeholders might we be, working with? School children, perhaps? Anybody got any thoughts? Just, relationships with Hollywood.
Movie stars, good role models.
Movie stars, good role models. How would you measure that?
Crime rate.
Crime rates. Okay, maybe that's. In relation to an organisation, I'm not quite sure how we would sort of link that together. Maybe we think about. Anybody got any other? Yeah, one down the back.
John create like hybridization and having budget for government in the health.
Okay, yeah. So health issues for the community in which we're located, and also for employees. Is that where you're thinking? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a good point. How might we be measuring that? The health of our employees. Anybody got any ideas how we might measure the health of our employees? A free health assessment. The government's doing that at the moment, actually, for a lot of businesses. So yeah, that's a good one. Any other thoughts how we might measure the health of employees? A common one? Yeah. Number of sick days. Yeah. These are pretty simple measures, but it's all stuff that we can include in sustainability reporting. Lost time injury, types of things. This is all sort of measures that are reflecting on the organisation's impact on social issues. And so, the key thing is, if we can measure it, then we can start managing it. So generally, there's a lot of these indicators in the organisations already. we already measure lost time injuries. We probably already measure sick days. So it's about putting that information together in the report into one spot, so that we can then start to see a more holistic view of our performance in social aspects. I mean, other ones down here I've listed: training and education for employees. I mean, that's probably going to be tracked, but that's again something that has an impact on social values within the organisation. Community outreach programs. These are sorts of things. Well, how much money are we, spending, or what activities are we doing to help our local community? Maybe, some non-profit organisations, soup kitchens, maybe volunteer activities where we go and help clean up rivers or clean up days and these types of activities. How much money are we giving to charity-based organisations? What's our performance in that area? All of this information can be included in the sustainability report. We've got that family leave programs, safety of products. What's our performance in terms of product recalls and impacts on on the community? Employee health, prohibits of bribery, corruption practices. I mean, this is an interesting one. Corruption. I mean, you've probably all been reading the news about China. I think there was another one in the news. Was it Rio or BHP recently? Another corruption issue. I mean, let's open a little sort of debate on that. Is it, if you're an international company, whose set of values should you take overseas when you trade overseas? Should you take the values of your own organisation, say Australian values, if you're an Australian company, or should you accept the values of the local community that you're working in? I mean, anybody got any thoughts on this? I mean, it's a very difficult question. Yeah, sorry. The local community. You should take the values of the local community. Okay. Anybody agree or disagree?
Take the CI based standard, which means we take the higher degree of standard.
Take the highest standard available. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, who agrees that we should take the highest standard available in all the countries that we work? One. Couple. Who thinks that we should just take the values of the local community where we're operating? One, couple, three. So I mean, it's pretty low voting here tonight, but but it's a difficult question. I mean, from experience, you take the highest standard that you're working in, so that you provide the highest ethical set of values across your whole organisation. But it's often very difficult to do. And I'll give you an example. I was working in Turkey a while back, and I was chatting to the plant manager. They just built a new factory, and the guy said, he was an American guy who'd been sort of brought in to set this factory up for an American company working in Turkey. And he said, we had a real problem getting phone lines connected to our new factory. We went to the phone company and they said, it's going to be 3 months before we can get the phone line in. And he says, well, we're starting the factory, in next week or in a couple of weeks, and we need this phone line in now. So sorry, it's going to be 3 months. So he was then, the same factory manager was then having a chat with the local mayor. And he met the local mayor, and he said to the local mayor, it's a funny thing around here. I can't get a phone line, hooked up to this factory. And the local mayor said to him, along the lines of, we've got a really great, local soccer team here, and we're really looking for some sponsorship for our soccer team. Would you be interested in sponsoring our soccer team? Said the mayor, and the factory manager says, yeah, maybe. And the conversation was along the lines of, you help us with the soccer team, and they did. They helped him out with the soccer team, and within a week the phone line was connected. So it's tenuous. It's often very tenuous and difficult to work, under these conditions, it's an issue that all companies face, when you go outside of your own country. But I guess the bottom line for any legal or ethical basis is that you have to accept the highest standard that you would normally accept. I mean, there's been plenty of examples with the likes of Nike, contracting out manufacture of shoes to poorer countries, which are then perceived or reported to be using child labour or poor working conditions, and it reflects badly on the organisation. So there's these sort of ethical issues which it may be legal for underage people in that country to make shoes, but the ramifications on the corporation and the brand and the reputation of the corporation is so significant that generally you try to avoid it. So how an organisation is handling these sorts of ethical issues is something else that can be included in the social performance of the organisation. Okay. All right. Okay, I don't know if you can read this one, but I guess we talk about maturity models a lot in enterprise risk and risk management. This is a similar kind of maturity model for sustainability reporting. What we've seen initially with sustainability reporting is a sort of a simplistic approach to reporting. So we call it reputational management here. Limited alignment between reporting and overall business strategy. No or limited performance data or trend analysis, no articulation of material sustainability or risks, limited or no alignment with recognised reporting standards and guidelines. So a report in this sort of area, it might be cobbling together our basic financial information. We put our lost time injuries, our sort of sick day injuries, all the sort of bits of information, maybe a bit of water usage, what we used last year, some of the other information that's easy to hand around within the organisation, put it into the report, which is a start. At least we're starting to communicate with the stakeholders, and it's going to be something that will perhaps offer something, some form of value, and better than nothing. I mean, as a local resident, if there's a company or a factory next door to me, and I really know nothing about what goes on in that factory, I'm going to be quite suspicious about, and I'm always going to be sort of a bit worried, and the relationship, is not going to be that good. But if there's another company, another factory, who tell me a bit more about their operating methodologies and their safety programs and, their emissions, their water usage or whatever it is, I'm going to feel a bit more comfortable with that organisation being in my community. So this is the first part. The next part, reporting primary focus on operational performance and risk management, stakeholder engagement, information, but not clearly directed to target audience. Some alignment with recognised guidelines and standards. Limited trend analysis. So this is sort of a little bit more mature, having a bit more of a risk focus. Where are we trying to take? Where are we? What risks are we trying to minimise in terms of emissions or injuries, and how are we preventing negative consequences? The third one comes. So we start to talk about value. We're looking at clear articulation, material sustainability. These are our sustainability or our risks, our environmental risks. This is where we see ourselves as an organisation in terms of, how our impact on the environment. Alignment with overall business strategy and recognised guidelines and standards. So we're seeing in some of the more mature companies, CEOs who, their corporate objectives are associated with ensuring that that we have minimal impact on the environment, or that we're leaders in environmental management or leaders in sustainability, not just sustainability reporting. And it's been identified as something that can add value, it can strengthen brand, and improve competitive position, and therefore can actually add value to the shareholder at the end of the day. So, so that's kind of where we're, where we're heading. I think the important sort of takeaway for sustainability, I think, is let me just check this is. The important takeaway for sustainability is that it's stakeholder focused, not shareholder focused. So the audience is different to a financial report. Typically, we look at these different pillars. We looked at financial, we looked at environmental, and we looked at social. Now, some reports look at different things, and the other thing is that it's a maturity process within organisations. So, what we'll do, we'll take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back. We'll have a quick look at a sustainability report together, so you can see this kind of thing as it plays out, and then we'll talk about insurance after that. So, 10 minutes, and we'll get back in.
Actually, I have applied the special consideration for the first assignment because I've been suffering some mental problems.
Okay, let's go through the system.
Yeah, it's already approved. Actually, I've done at least 70% of the work.
That's right.
So I have to tell you this.
That's right. Yeah.
But I couldn't get your email from Beacon website.
Okay. All right, so let's get started again. I mean, I've just picked this one annual report because I know the company probably a little better than some, and I know that sustainability within their organisation has evolved significantly probably over the last 3-4 years. It's gone from some very basic information associated with lost time injuries and water usage and those types of things to becoming a far more strategic document. Amcor, for those of you who may not be familiar, is a large multinational organisation. It operates in about 33 countries around the world. It's got about 250 sites, turnover in the region of about $10 billion, I think, a year. So it's one of Australia's larger corporations. So the other thing is it's a packaging company. So they're making everything from plastic bread bags to plastic drinks bottles, and they have got I think other sort of tin can sort of operations and the like. So this is their sustainability report. It's about 58 pages long. I'm not going to go through all of the pages, but I guess I just want to show you, their approach. Now, previously we talked about 3 pillars, and that's the common sort of adopted approach. But the way they've approached it is they've looked at more than that. So they're looking at the same issues, but they've just sliced and diced it slightly differently. Now, this is this is one company's perspective on it. And I guess that's the message. With a lot of the stuff that sort of I cover in these lectures, there is no sort of right and wrong way often to do these things. It's all open to interpretation. Let me just turn that other one on. So and it's a message that I guess I'm keen to get across to you. I'm looking for your understanding of the basic principles, and then that will allow you then to understand how different companies interpret those principles and apply them for their own needs. So they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sort of pillars: environment, community, workplace, marketplace, and economy, and then start to look at what sustainability is amongst those different sort of pillars. So they're just talking a little bit about what Amcor is, what it does. So, like I said, beverage packaging, food packaging, healthcare packaging, personal care, tobacco packaging, household items, industrial films, and the like. A bit of an overview for the company. So we've got to keep in mind that who the audience is for this sustainability. It's not necessarily the investors, it's the other stakeholders, people who've got an interest perhaps in what the organisation does. Now, a lot of this information might be included in a set of annual accounts, but you've actually got to dig quite deeply often in these annual accounts to pull out some of this information. So annual sales worldwide about 9.3 billion that year. Depends a lot on the exchange rates. Employees, 21,000 employees, different products, different product groups, and the like around the world. The message from the CEO to say, hey, look, sustainability is important to us. It's on our strategic agenda, and again, this is something that we talked about in terms of maturity. Talk about packaging, the importance of packaging, how it can actually reduce waste. So, packaging itself is not necessarily wasteful if it's actually reducing waste itself. So then this is just a quick summary, their plans, where they're going in terms of the organisation. You're free. I would suggest if you jump onto a company that you may be familiar with, go and have a look at their sustainability report, just to see how those principles that we talked about tonight are being applied in their report, and you'll probably see some themes coming through. So they've got these 5 themes. So the first 2 here are economic and environment. So what are their plans, their achievements, so some of the key measures with environment, and then moving on to their workplace, their objectives, their marketplace, who they're associated with their customers, and also the community. So really that's the sort of the guts of it, and then it sort of goes into more detail into the business and what the business does, how sustainability is approached within the organisation. There's a little bit about Dow Jones Sustainability Index. So it's currently a member of the Dow Jones Sustainability Index worldwide. Had a total score of 64%. Average score is 59% in that market segment. So it's an opportunity for them to show off their environmental or sustainability performance. And the thing to keep in mind though is it can be selective. So other organisations who may not be performing quite so well, but may be involved in Dow Jones sustainability, may not be so forthcoming in their information. There's a lot of flexibility associated with what can be reported. A bit about governance and risk management. This is, perhaps if you're researching a company for your assignment, it's a place to go and have a look at. The sustainability report. You'll probably find some information on risk management in there. And it's a lot easier read than a set of financial accounts. So, risk management, stakeholder engagement. Who are our stakeholders? So, we talked about stakeholders already tonight. They're talking about their stakeholders as customers, investors, analysts, co-workers, suppliers, communities, governments. So all of these are, stakeholders associated with this. And then they get into a bit more detail as to some of the measures with this sort of economic sort of pillar, if you like, and a snapshot as their basic information. So if you're researching a company, it may be a lot easier to get into the sustainability report, to pull out some key information and trawling through all the financial accounts. Some other stuff that they're on to. They have an Earthwatch program where some employees go around the world helping some environmentally sort of sensitive areas and the like. So their approach to climate change and environment. I guess you get the picture, really. Anybody got any questions or thoughts as to sustainability reporting? Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the next topic tonight. Is insurance or risk transfer. You'll all be familiar now with sort of risk matrices, and often a lot of risk management is associated with taking a risk and treating that risk and reducing it in terms of likelihood or reducing it in terms of consequence. And so we're looking at treatment options to how to reduce risk from A to B. And it may be A is located in a risk area which is unacceptable to us, which is outside of our risk appetite. Now, just a word on sort of risk appetite. It's an ongoing debate. There's no sort of easy answer as to what risk appetite is. And from last week's discussion, you'll get a feel for how psychology is involved in determining risk appetite and how it can change with what's happened in the recent past and how we apply different types of thinking to decision making. But one of the most simplistic approaches to risk appetite when we're using matrices is is if we were to draw a line somewhere along here, as some kind of threshold, that might represent our risk appetite. In that, if the risk is sitting up here, it's outside of our appetite. We're uncomfortable with that. That's unacceptable risk that we're prepared to keep within the organisation. And if we can apply some kind of control to reduce that to the other side of the line, that becomes inside our risk appetite. So that's, I guess, what one way of thinking about simplistic risk appetite. Now, in practice, that risk appetite is not quite just a thin line. It's kind of a fuzzy line. And you get some risks which are maybe close to that line, where the cost of reducing that risk or treating that risk is really just too high. So instead of trying to treat it, we kind of live with it. On the other hand, you might get a risk which is sitting just below the appetite line, but it's very cheap to treat. And so we say, well, it's kind of within our appetite, but we might as well treat it and reduce it even further. So there's a sort of a cost-benefit analysis that goes along with this risk identification and risk treatment. I'm trying to think of an example of a risk which might be sitting on the line. Take, for example, say you're in you've got a warehouse. It's got a lot of your stock inside. It's got say $2 million worth of stock in this warehouse. And if there's a fire in that warehouse, then it's going to be a big impact to your business. It's going to financial loss. You're going to struggle to keep your customers sort of fed with material or products. And you look at the options. What could we do to reduce that risk? Has anybody got any ideas as to how we can reduce the risk of fire in a warehouse? Sorry? Insurance. Yeah. No, that's a good point. We'll come to that. Yeah. So insurance is one way. If the place burns down, we have some insurance, and that insurance pays for our losses. Yeah. Any other ideas? How else could we reduce the risk, do you think? Security guards. Yeah, we could have security guards to control the place and make sure that no one breaks in and steals anything. Or sets the fire and those sorts of things. So security. Any other thoughts?
Internal control standards.
Internal control standards, for example. What specific? External auditing.
Control the companies that do the audits, audit financial report.
Yeah, I think you're onto auditing is an important part, and you're onto the right thing there. What I'm interested right here is what would those auditors be auditing? They might audit security that's being done. They might audit the fact that insurance is in place. What else could we do to improve or reduce the risk of that? Alarm security. So alarm security. Maybe we also look at fire protection, fire extinguishers. Yeah. Maybe we've had someone come in and they said, well, you need a fire sprinkler system. You need to get that put in.
What about expanding another factory?
Or move to another factory.
Yeah, I mean to minimize.
Or
just focus on one aspect.
Exactly. Yeah. So we could say, well, we're going to split our stock. We're going to keep some in this warehouse, and we're going to keep some in another warehouse. That's an excellent suggestion. Yeah. So there's lots of things that we could do potentially to treat this perhaps unacceptable risk. Now, ones that might sit on the line might be go rent another warehouse. It's going to be expensive, but it's going to be a great mitigation. Yeah. It might be to put the sprinkler system in, because that's really going to reduce our risk of fire, but it's going to be very expensive. If we've got a leased warehouse, the building doesn't belong to us, so we would have to spend a lot of our own money on a very short time frame of our lease to justify that expenditure. So these are sort of some of the some of the treatment options where we might sort of have a risk which is sitting on the line, and we go, oh look, we'll just live with it. We'll just live with the warehouse and the risk of fire. It's kind of outside our appetite, but we're just going to live with it for now. Or as our company grows, yeah, we'll think about opening a second warehouse rather than extending the current warehouse. So these sorts of examples. So there's lots of ways that we can come in and try and treat different risks. And I guess you probably would have noticed in the HB book, there's four different approaches generally. So you've got so business change, that might be a case of opening a second warehouse. Right? Risk control and reduction, that might be the sprinkler system, or it might be the security guards, or it might be having no smoking policy, some training for the people that do maintenance on the electrical systems and whatnot. Risk transfer, that comes back to insurance. Someone mentioned insurance. So we're transferring the financial risk of the loss of the factory to another party at a cost. There's obviously a cost when we do that. Now we could also do that via contracts. It may be that we say, okay, we're going to contract out our warehousing operations. That goes on a lot. You find that a lot of the supermarkets and other large organisations, all the warehousing operations are actually done by independent companies, and so the risk of that process not working is then with another party. And then risk retention really is a case of, okay, we're going to retain this risk ourselves. We're going to continue to keep this risk. It may be that we put some money aside in a fund somewhere, such that if that warehouse burns down, we've got this money put aside, which is allocated to setting up a new warehouse. Or it might be unfunded, which is like, well, we just take the risk. If it happens, then we'll try and work out what to do when it happens, which is it is a strategy, and it may sound like we're going to do nothing, but we're doing nothing after the analysis, which is very different from just doing absolutely nothing. I think there's a point, a key point there. So these are some of our strategies that we've got to try and move this risk perhaps across our risk appetite line or reduce it further. Now I want to talk about sort of one of these transfer mechanisms, insurance. Really, because when you get into industry, this is probably one of the most common risk transfer tools, and it's useful to have an awareness as to the different types of insurance, particularly as they relate to industry compared to perhaps your car insurance or your home insurance that you might be perhaps more familiar with. To sort of take a step back in history, if you like, there was insurance industry started up a long time ago over in the UK, in London, where there was people who were going off around the world in their ships, getting spices and other sort of supplies, and there was a huge risk of the ships not coming back. And if they didn't come back, the owners of the ships would lose a lot of money. And so there were some wealthy individuals in London who basically said, okay, your ship's going off to Africa to go and pick up some spices. If it doesn't come back, I'll pay for the loss or help you buy another ship. And, but if I'm going to do that, I want a little bit of money from you in return for me taking that risk on from you. So this is the kind of the insurance contract sort of came into play here, where risk was being transferred for some form of premium. And it's still, I mean, the home of insurance was Lloyd's. There was I think a little coffee shop or tea shop, coffee house, which was called Lloyd's, and it's grown this humongous insurance industry today. The one thing I guess to keep in note with insurance is that it only provides financial compensation. It can't provide anything else. And as a result, you end up with insurable losses and non-insurable losses. What do we mean by insurable losses? Well, I mean, you can probably think of losses, insurable loss. Anybody think of an insurable loss? What comes to mind? Where would you claim on your insurance?
Car accident.
Car accident? Yeah. Anything else? Fire? Fire at your house? You've got house insurance? Fire in your factory? You've got fire insurance in your factory? Yeah. So these are insurable losses. Now, what if I said to you, we've got, we just lost a customer, lost a major customer. One of the major customers just, renewed their contract. Is that insurable? So it's an uninsurable loss. Okay. Now, when you have often fires and things, say your factory burned down, you have a component of that which is insurable, and you have a component of that which is non-insurable. So the parts that would be insurable are typically the insurance company would pay for a new factory input. If the policy is a certain type of policy, it might cover the wages of the employees while they're stood down as the new factory is being built, or it might cover the costs of of running your factory from some temporary accommodation to try and keep the business going. But if your factory burns down and as a result your customers then move to your competitor and they move to your competitor and they disappear, that's an uninsurable loss. But it's directly attributable to the fire that you incurred, or the fire that you had. So that you might have this fire, you've got insurable losses, which is the building, but you've got uninsurable losses, which could be the loss of market share, or loss of reputation, or brand damage to the brand. And so it's important to remember that with your warehouse, you go, that's fine, we've bought insurance now, we're all fine now, so we can factory put the warehouse burns down, doesn't really matter. Well, that's not the full story, because if your warehouse does burn down, you're going to have to manage the loss of those orders that you can't fulfill, and that might mean that you lose customers. They go to your competitors. And there's some amazing statistics after major fires. Even something I don't think right off the top of my head. There's a large proportion of sort of a third, maybe to a half of businesses fail after having incurred a major fire, even though they're insured, and even though they have business interruption insurance, they have property protection insurance. And the reason they fail is because they lose their customer base. So these are uninsurable losses that businesses incur. So the other ones that I mentioned here is loss of opportunity. When you're trying to keep your business going after it's just burnt down, you're not thinking about that growth strategy. You're really just thinking about how to get products out the door. You're not developing that new relationship with those new customers because you're kind of focused on just maintaining relationships with existing companies. Another uninsurable loss is environmental damage associated with things. So the insurance company might pay for a new building, but they haven't paid for the damage to the environment which the fire has caused, or those other sort of longer-term uninsurable issues, and the community as well. If your factory's burnt down, you had a lot of employees, maybe those employees are out of a job now because your factory is not operating, and the business has had to maybe move to another location. So these are some of the sort of limitations with insurance, and it's surprising how there's a lot of people that I've come across in business who don't think past their insurance policies. They don't realise that insurance is only just part of the protection that the organisation can have. There's a lot of other uninsurable losses that go along with that. There was one fire I was involved with, or a big fire loss, and I spoke to the I told you this story. I spoke to the CFO afterwards. It was about 3 years later, and I said to him, what would you have done differently if, given what you know now? And he said, I would have quit straight away. Even though the insurance was all in place, the workload that the incident created in terms of trying to keep the business going was just extreme, and he wouldn't want to go through that again, or wouldn't want anybody to go through that again. So just having insurance wasn't enough. There was a whole other bunch of controls that they really needed. One thing that I guess to introduce you to is how insurance companies make money. I don't know if any of you have ever come across the term the insurance cycle. It's another business cycle. You're probably familiar with different types of business cycles. But insurance prices go up and down, and it's sort of like this sort of way. The insurance industry call it a soft market if the insurance is cheap, and a hard market if insurance is expensive. And a lot of that cycle is associated with how insurance companies actually make their money. Generally, an insurance company, say AIG or any of the other companies, they actually get income. They get income generally from premiums. So they got money coming in the door from premiums. They've also got a lot of capital invested, so they'll have investment income as well. And what they'll also do is they'll buy insurance from other reinsurance companies, so the risk gets spread around the industry. And so if there's sort of a major loss, they may be able to claim on their reinsurance. So this is where their money sort of comes in from. In terms of money going out, operating expenses, obviously, in terms of running a company, reinsurance premiums that are required, and paying out any losses. And there's a ratio that people often talk about, and that's really the incurred losses plus expenses against the net premium. So it's really a balance between, are we receiving more money than we're actually paying out in losses? Now, there are situations when insurance companies have really low premiums, they're paying out more money in losses than they're receiving in premiums. That's obviously not a good year for insurance companies. But they can sometimes make up those shortfalls through their investment income. So insurance companies are sensitive to investment returns. So if something happens in the investment market, that can impact the performance of an insurance company. And also what tends to happen is due to competitive forces in the market, the premiums can go up and down, but the losses generally sort of stay relatively stable. So that creates this market cycle. I'll give you a sort of an example of one company. I was working with one of the insurance companies, and I was working as a risk advisor to some underwriters. And it was a time when it was the early 90s. It was a hard market, so insurance prices were high. And one of the underwriters' concerns was that there'd been a lot of losses with buildings made out of insulated sheet metal. So these are sort of food factories and things like that, where they've got these thin metal skins with polystyrene in it, so it provides insulation for cool rooms and things like that. This polystyrene burns very well once it gets on fire, and generally the whole place burns very quickly and burns down. And a few insurance companies had incurred some heavy losses from this type of industry. So their strategy was, let's just get out of it. We're not going to write that type of business anymore. So the whole industry, the food industry, was having real problems buying insurance from anybody. No one was prepared to sell them any insurance. They couldn't get insurance. And I remember some meetings of some of the food industry representatives, and they said, is there anything we can do in terms of managing our risk without having no insurance? So anyway, what started to happen, there was one insurance company that said, here's an opportunity for us. No one's wanting to insure these people. They're desperate to buy insurance because they can't take the risk on themselves. Maybe we can charge them a really high insurance premium. We can make any money out of it. So during this hard market, which is effectively a hard market, this is what they did. And they had people like myself go out and have a really close look at these factories and then advise them in terms of fire protection or management programs to reduce the risk of fires or losses. And then put a lot of pressure on the organisations to improve their safety and protection and charge them penny premium. So for a year or two, this one insurance company was the only one insuring any of these facilities and was making had some profit. But then what happens is, because the company's relatively short memories, here's an opportunity for us. There's lots of money to be made in these food factories, so we're not insuring them at the moment. We've been burnt a little bit in the past, but I think we're over that now. Let's get back in and take advantage of this opportunity of high insurance prices. So then other people started to come into the market. They started to compete, so insurance prices started to reduce. Then the cycle sort of then starts. So you can see this the market peaked with no insurers, and then some insurers come in, price starts to drop down, and then because of competitive pressures, maybe there's a lot of investment. There was a lot of investment income coming into the insurance company, so they felt that they could drop their premiums a little bit more. So their premiums were coming down, so the market was starting to soften, and then they were more interested in getting business through the door to keep premium flow because the market was so soft. So then what started to happen is people weren't going out to look at these factories. So the underwriters were just keen to get any business in, to get the cash flow in, and so the quality of the risk that they were writing was then going down, and so the whole cycle started again. Poor quality factories started with fires, no one then wanted to write this stuff, and so there were some losses incurred and the premiums started then going up. So you can see there's this sort of cyclical effect with the soft and hard market in the insurance industry. And it will always be with us. As long as sort of human nature is out there, it's always going to be with us. So they're definitely cyclical markets, the insurance industry, and I guess other things that make the insurance industry a little bit different from others is some of the accounting concepts and methods that they use. Because of the long life cycle of some claims, they have to put money aside, which is not earmarked for incurred but not IBNR system, incurred but not received claims. So there's these sort of some claims like asbestos claims that haven't sort of fully developed, and they don't quite know how much it's going to cost, but they have to put some money aside for it, so that their accounting system is a little bit unusual compared to other organisations. So there's sort of some other sort of what I call the differences, just some differences between the way insurance companies work compared to other companies. Just a word on just talk about some of the major types of risk that or insurable risks. There's three that we want to talk about. Property risk we talked about sort of briefly tonight. So this is the protection of buildings, equipment, and typical physical type hazards. So so most sort of businesses and factories that you might be involved with, that you get involved in sort of finance or risk management, most facilities will have some kind of cover. Covers will generally, in Australia, there's one thing they call ISR, it's industrial special risks, fires, floods, explosions, lightning, aircraft, earthquake, these types of things. In general, there's a sort of fairly well-defined set of insurable perils, but that can be extended for some extra money. So that if you've got a factory which is sitting in California, for example, in an earthquake zone, you think, well, maybe we'll buy some earthquake insurance for that factory over there, so you can extend coverage for additional risks. What most insurance companies will do is they will take a look at these particular large factory. They'll have somebody go over and have a look at that factory on their behalf and do an assessment, and then they'll calculate their premium based on their assessor's report. So unlike you buying a house insurance and just filling out a form and getting insurance, when you get into sort of industrial insurance, there's a lot more detail collected based on how big's the factory, what's the factory built of, has it got sprinkler systems, has it got this, has it got the other, have you got what management systems have you got in place, do you do any evacuation training, have you got any maintenance programs ongoing, who's responsible for looking after essential services, all these types of things that are studied in a lot more detail to come up with a competitive quote. There's one key part of property risks that you should know about, and that is this called business interruption insurance. Now, business interruption insurance only pays out any money after an event. So, if you've got a fire that's shut down your warehouse, and you can't operate that warehouse, you may have to maybe set up another warehouse, a temporary operation, or you may have to ask another competitor sometimes to supply material to your customers on a short-term basis. Or you may just have to stand down some staff and incur some costs associated with having staff with nothing to do. Now, your business interruption insurance will cover that loss, that financial loss. One interesting thing with business interruption cover is that there is a deductible associated with it. Now, you'll be familiar with deductibles in your car insurance. You can choose, I pay the first $200 or $500 of any loss. So the same thing happens with industrial insurance. Deductibles are typically a lot higher for property. You might be looking first, depends how big the organisation is, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 250,000. It can be quite significant. Now, with business interruption insurance, the deductible is a time-based deductible. So it doesn't start paying out any money until a certain number of days have been incurred. So if you had a small fire in your warehouse and it's put you out of business for maybe 2 days, you haven't been able to move anything around, and you've been cleaning up for 2 days. If your deductible is maybe 7 days, you can't get any money out of the insurance company for that business interruption. If it's a bigger deductible, a bigger loss, then a more extended outage that's over 7 days, then you can start to claim some money back for that business interruption loss. So it's a time-based deductible associated with business interruption insurance. And business interruption insurance only kicks off off the back of another insured loss, which has to be a fire or a flood or anything like that. You can't just say, I've got a business interruption claim with no physical damage. Another form of property risk is of insurance is boiler machinery. If you've got large machines and equipment that where an engine breaks down, or a big mould, or a big production line type equipment, boilers, pressure vessels, these may fail and needs to be insured. That's separate to the ISR cover, known as boiler and machinery insurance. And again, that can be connected into the business interruption insurance as well. So your boiler blows up, the insurance company buys you your boiler, and downtime associated with the factory not being able to work because the boiler's down can be insured as well. Other forms of industrial special risks, forms of property, motor, which you'll be familiar with, except often with large companies you're looking at fleet. It's known as fleet insurance, where you're insuring a large range of a large number of cars. Marines are kind of a bit of an interesting one, because that's actually insuring stocks that may be sent from one place to another. It's typically known as marine, but can actually cover insurance of materials in transit, whether they're road or by air as well. And maritime is the insurance of ships and the like. So there's lots of different types of insurance, and I guess the important thing to note is you need to buy the most appropriate insurance for whatever kind of risks you've got. Now, property is kind of straightforward. Liability insurance, liability risks are possibly a little bit more difficult to comprehend. They're not necessarily as clear-cut as a fire, or as clear-cut as perhaps another insurable loss. I guess some examples are probably the best ones. Anybody think of any examples where liability risks might be incurred within a business? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Sorry? Balance sheet events like legal claims, legal issues, sort of a failure in sort of something that you're responsible for. Yeah, so a legal type issue can be covered. Bankruptcy. Difficult to insure against bankruptcy. It's a good point though, because one of the things that insurance doesn't cover is poor management practice. You can't insure yourself against being a bad manager. Professional indemnity is insurance, yes, another form of liability insurance. And for those of you who don't know what professional indemnity is, it's associated with making a mistake. If you're an engineer designing a bridge and the bridge falls down, if you're a doctor and you misdiagnose something, then in your professional capacity you made an error, and then the damages associated with being sued for that are then covered by your professional indemnity insurance. Any other
provision of warranty?
Provision of warranty. Product warranty. Yeah, I mean that's insurable. You could put together an insurance package for that, and there's a thing called product recall insurance probably tied into that as well, where if you're manufacturing a product which is going out to retail outlets or to consumers, and you need to recall it, there can be some incredible costs associated with that. We've seen, I don't know if any of you remember the peanut butter incidents a while back. Does that ring a bell with anybody? Kraft Foods were buying peanuts from this one place, and they were making this peanut butter, and it had salmonella. I think ended up in the peanut butter. They didn't quite know where it was from. It was tracked from certain mice or something that were in the peanut fats somewhere. And as a result, all the Kraft peanut butter across Australia and overseas had to be recalled. It was a major job and a huge impact to the reputation of peanut butter everywhere. It's quite an interesting one. So the cost of recalling all this material was then could be covered in a liability or a product recall policy. Generally, there's sort of probably the common one is public or general liability insurance that affect a third party. And I remember I was at a shopping centre one time, chatting to the shopping centre manager about some risk issues, and he said they had a real problem with people having slips and falls in the shopping centre and then claiming against the shopping centre management for injuries. And there was a little industry kind of going on where people would say, oh, look, I slipped over on this spoon and I'm injured and I need money. And often what would happen is the centre management would say, oh, look, give this person $5 grand, tell them just to sign this thing to say that they'll never sue us in the future. Because if we have to take this to court and we can test this in court, it's probably going to cost us 20 grand. So it's cheaper for us to just give you some money and tell them to go away. We started to set a precedent, and the message got around some of these districts. And so there was all these people showing up saying, I've just hurt myself because I've fallen over. So the shopping centres were inundated with all of these claims. That's kind of like going a little bit beyond this, but it's associated with injury of a third party, actually, associated with your operations. So if somebody's walking through the shopping centre and they fall on a banana skin and injure themselves, then that would be a liability claim on the general liability insurance for that shopping centre and others. And so we've seen lots of other examples of this with things like asbestos. It's a liability, that's a form of liability cover incidents. Smoking issues, injuries at work, people get injured at work, and also maybe somebody's used your product and become injured. The product was faulty or injurious in some way. So that's sort of a liability for liability insurance. Directors and officers insurance is another one, form of liability insurance, where if the company is sued as a whole and the directors and officers are effectively liable for their actions, provided they haven't done anything illegal, which is always often the case, the difficulty, then directors and officers insurance will cover them for damages incurred. It's an interesting one because the D&O insurance, a lot of these cases have to go to court first, and so the insurance company says, yes, we will pay for the court costs, but if it's found that what you were doing was illegal, then we won't pay for anything. So all the court costs are going to be under that. So it's a high-risk strategy, and it's also often very, legally complex, associated with, well, did the director act with knowledge of some information and make some sort of decision, which could be illegal, which could be an insider trading kind of decision or that kind of thing, or was he acting without knowledge of something. So legally, D&O insurance can be quite a complex area. There's a lot of specialists involved in that. Specific about people, just a few sort of notes on people type insurance. Injury at work, workers' compensation. In Australia, it's a legal requirement for all employees to be included under a national workers' compensation scheme. So all employers have to pay to some nominated insurance companies for workers' compensation cover. So what that covers is the costs of medical services associated with injury and any other damages which might be incurred by the person who gets injured. While they're working, when they're outside of their work, then that workers' compensation policy doesn't apply. There's some, again, where does an employee become a worker and when does they become a private citizen? There's sometimes a grey area around that. An example of that is typically with work functions and work parties. There's been quite a few cases where somebody has been to a Christmas party, a work Christmas party, had a few too many drinks, and got themselves injured. That's something stupid. And there's all sorts of complex legal sort of issues around at what point did that person stop being an employee? They're basically under the control of the company while they're at the party because of the company function. But then, when they left the party, then perhaps they're then an individual and they no longer covered by the workers' compensation policy. However, what happens when all the people then leave the party as a group and then decide to go to the casino together? So it can get really quite complicated in terms of sort of when is an employee an employee. Other forms of people risk, corporate travel companies, expatriate medical, impatriate medical, hostage and repatriation. Those are pretty sort of straightforward. Hostage and repatriation is kind of an interesting one, where if you're working in a place like Mexico, there's a high risk that you could be taken hostage and put up for ransom. So there's organisations out there who offer Sylvester Stallone type services, where they'll fly in helicopters and pull out your executives from hostages or SAS type things. So there's forms of insurance around this, and there's all sorts of options out there. Okay. All right. We'll just take another break, and then we'll wrap up insurance. So another 10-minute break. Not much more to go, and then I've got a couple of comments for you on assignment 2 as well, and also assignment 1. So we'll see you in a little bit. Okay, let's keep going. Had a couple of good questions during the break, which I'd like to just talk to you a little bit about, because I think it adds depth to the conversation tonight. Now, the first question, just remind me. What was your question? You were going to ask me a question. Okay. Damage to the Great Barrier Reef. So, just so. I'm still thinking about the answer.
Yeah, I was just thinking about. Okay, yep. Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking about the case of the damaging Great Barrier in North Queensland, currently in Australia. And yeah, the factor is about the it's caused by the ship from China mining, which is the chemicals fall down into the around the Great Barrier in North Queensland, and then it causes up dozens of biota in that area, and the fact that the victim only charged by 55,000 fine, but it's not. I was thinking it's not balanced with the causes. So, is it a part of suitable policy or something?
Yeah, yes and no is the answer to that one, I guess. So what we're looking at is a ship's come from China or wherever, and it's cut through the barrier reef, and it's hit the barrier reef and done a lot of damage. It's leaked some oil, so we've had oil spills which have gone on to the pristine beaches in the barrier reef. It's put they put this special paint underneath the ships to prevent animals living on the ship's bottom, and so this anti-fouling paint has got onto the reef, so it's killing the reef. So you've got sort of issues with that. And obviously other sort of damage to the reef as a result of this impact. Now there's been a fine. The company's been fined by the Australian government, I think, for damage to the reef of $50,000 or something along those lines. For the captain of the ship, right? So he's got to pay that. Yeah. Now whether he'd be insured or not is a good question.
My question is why the Australian government cannot negotiate with the Chinese company in order to minimize like insurance if because it's just a company cure once, and with how the Australian government and then the companies make the insurance policy.
Okay.
To minimize the impact.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's not insured by the government. The government's not insuring against these sorts of issues. I think that's probably the important thing. So, this cuts across the environment issues generally. The government doesn't buy insurance in case some area of the environment gets burnt or damaged. Bushfires, for example. The government doesn't hold an insurance policy that covers for the cost of clean up of that necessarily. So the government has sort of limited responsibility. From an insurance perspective, the owners and the operators of the ship would have some responsibility for clean up maybe payment of fines. The clean-up costs are possibly insurable. Remember the Exxon Valdez and all of these sorts of issues. A lot of that, I think, or some of that was covered by the insurance companies. Some of it is not. If it's deemed to be of an illegal act, then the insurance companies will say, well, we don't insure you against illegal acts. So if they've been breaking the law and caused this issue, it may be the company that has to pay this without their insurance cover. So it really depends on how the incident occurred and how it's treated. In terms of fines, generally, I would say fines are not normally covered by insurance companies. You can't go and buy insurance against speeding fines and things like that, because that in some ways is a reflection of poor management. So if you've done something and you get fined, you've been a poor manager, and insurance companies don't pay out on lack of management skills. So I guess, I don't know if that answers your question totally, but I think it reflects on another issue, which is the value of the environment, and or what price do we put on the environment, and it comes back to the sustainability issue. A company is legally entitled, in some cases to pollute the environment, but that may not be ethically correct. Even though it may be legally legally allowable, it may not be ethically correct. So this is balanced against sort of what the law allows against what ethically we should be doing. So it's a good question, and there's no sort of really good answer for it, unfortunately. But hopefully that's a little clearer. Now there was another question you had. Yeah, what was your question?
That was weather risk. So how we can mitigate.
Okay, yeah, risk and weather issues, and okay. The question was, we had a lot of storms recently, and the insurance companies got hit with hail damage and broken roofs and cars getting damaged, and we got these extreme weather events. Now these are covered by the insurance companies generally, these are sort of low frequency, high impact events that these insurance companies are getting hit with, climate change is something that insurance companies are extremely vulnerable to or extremely interested in. And people say, climate change, it's only 1 degree here or 1 degree there. What's the big deal? It means that sort of, I wear a t-shirt a couple more days of a year, or I put a jumper on for a couple more days, or it's raining a couple more days. 1 degree here or there, it's climate change. It's not a big deal. However, what climate change does affect is general weather patterns, and so we start to see a shift in the distribution of extreme events. And I want to sort of see if I can demonstrate how this works. Let's get the dot cam on. Okay. Now I haven't really sort of prepared this sketch or anything, but it's kind of interesting and kind of fundamental, I think, to what we're looking at tonight. And if we think of a frequency distribution of weather events, it might be so we've got the cost of a weather event, and then the likelihood frequency. Let's take an example of, let's say hail. Right? The distribution, it might be, I don't know. I did do some research on some of this a while back, but it might be a sort of distributions like this. So most of the events here, so hailstorm sizes say this is sort of typical average hailstorm size of say 2 mil and 2 millimeters, and then going up to when we've got sort of 5, 10, 15, whatever, and obviously the costs associated with that. Now what what insurance companies are interested in is when we get up into these, we call them tail type events, or we get into the tail area, right, which are low frequency but high impact events. You might have heard this sort of black swan sort of terminology. Now when we get a shift in with climate change, what actually starts to happen is this distribution starts to shift around a bit, and so it may be that we're getting more frequent, larger hailstorms, so our curve starts to sort of come down here in this area. All right, so we're having a higher frequency of storms with hailstorms of more than 5 millimeters, and so the area under the curve here is getting significantly larger. And if you were to do the maths and the likes of it, a 1 degree temperature shift can actually have a quite significant impact in your low frequency, high impact events. So it might be 1 degree temperature shift increases the frequency of days over 45 degrees. When we start to get into days over 45 degrees, then the likelihood of sort of severe bushfires then is a lot higher. So what we're seeing is a disproportionate increase in these low frequency, high impact or black swan type events through climate change. So insurance companies are particularly interested in that. So I hope that sort of gives you a bit of an insight as to where that where the stuff comes in. I want to talk about just some of the people involved in insurance that you may come across. Going back to the notes, and for those of you not aware, all the notes associated with the lectures are all on DSO, and so what I'm saying here is generally there. Perhaps we'll cover off perhaps some of the bits that I miss, but there's other things that I talk about that I may other things I talk about that may not be included on the notes. Just want to cover insurance brokers. You may be familiar with insurance brokers. They're the kind of middlemen between insurance companies and the insureds. Generally, their role is to go out and find the best price and the best coverage. I think one thing that is different between sort of household insurance and industrial insurance is levels of coverage. Generally in household and retail insurance it's pretty much the same, but when we get out into industrial type coverage, there's a lot more flexibility in what's covered and what's not covered. So the role of the broker is very much to look at what the company being insured needs and making sure that that's covered, and they're not buying too much or too little. There's been some discussion, or there've been some changes in the broker area over the last few years, and it's a little bit like what's been happening in the news with investment advisors, where investment advisors are getting commissions associated with the investment products that they sell. The insurance brokers also generally work on the arrangements that they get a commission from the insurance company based on the products that they sell to the insureds. So there's potential for conflicts of interest within the broking and insurance market, and that's something to be aware of. There was some cases a few years ago where one insurance broker company was pulled up in court and fined and sued quite a lot of money, because what they were doing, they were working on volume contracts with the insurance companies, so that they may find, say, 10 companies who are buying property insurance, and once that they'd sold a certain amount of property insurance, maybe to multiple clients, then there would be a threshold that the insurance company would give them additional compensation or additional sort of kickback type payments that the insured companies weren't familiar with. So this was picked up, and there was a big shake-up in the broking industry, particularly in the States, and it's meant to be more transparent now. But anyway, the brokers definitely work on the basis of premium payments from the insurance companies that they work with. Some situations you do have payment for service provided, but that's the way it is. Insurance underwriters, they're the representatives, if you like, of the insurance company who decide on the premium rates and also get involved with the negotiation of claims and whether the loss is covered. Risk engineers, they're the guys that go out and look at the factors and report back to the underwriters. Generally, they work for the underwriters. Sometimes they work for the brokers as well. Loss adjusters, they come in after the claim or after the loss and negotiate how much is appropriate for the payment of the claim. An actuary, what they do is they look at a whole range of claims or past losses and crunch all the numbers and work out how much premium should be charged and whether that's appropriate. So they're certainly the numbers guys. Insurance lawyers is also, or legal sides of claims is a complex area. There's specialist lawyers for that, and they're usually involved in negotiating or working out interpretations of policies, and that's potentially a horrible area once you've had a loss. Just want to talk to you about another sort of element of corporate insurance. For large organisations, we often look at using multiple different insurance companies. Initially, you might have this is a sort of a chart showing the insured value of an organisation going up, and then how this is all sort of put together. So at the bottom you've got the deductible, so that's the money that's paid by the insured company. In this case it's up to $100,000. So if the loss is less than $100,000, then the company pays that for themselves out of their deductible. If the loss then is higher and between 0.1 and 2 million, well then the primary insurance layer pays for that, and usually that's the primary insurance company who you do the deal with, or the broker does the deal with. Now generally one single insurance company is not big enough. We just looked at Amcor before. Assets within Amcor in the region of I think it was about $17 billion. So one insurance company is probably not going to be enough to cover that. They wouldn't want to take all that risk on themselves. They want to spread it around a bit. So what they'll do is so an insurance company will take a primary layer, so they'll take up to the first 2 million. If the loss is more than that, then they'll spread that risk to maybe a reinsurer or a co-insurer. And this is what you're seeing here. So the next level from 2 to 15 million, you've got 2 reinsurers involved. Now the proportion that they pay out is probably about sort of 75-25, or based on just the look of this chart. So that if there's a $10 million loss, the first 100,000 comes from the insured company. The next layer comes from the primary insurer, and then the difference is then split between the two, reinsurer 1 and reinsurer 2. And so you can see that as individual losses get higher and higher, the way reinsurers get involved changes. Another thing that I want to sort of point out here is I put in captive retention. Now, a captive is a captive insurance company, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of an organisation. So, take the example of Amcor. One of the subsidiaries of Amcor, a company that's owned by Amcor, was Amcor's insurance company. So that that company operated as an insurance company in their own right. So they had an accounting system which was based on an insurance company. They had insurance specialists working within that company as well. Now, what that allows the company, the Amcor, to do is that if they're having losses in, below 2 million, where most losses would occur, the higher frequency losses are going to be the smaller losses, then they can manage their own insurance in that area. And the advantage is that they can control their own premium costs, they can control their own claims, and they can also sort of allocate capital into the insurance company away from the normal balance sheet as how can you say, as capital which is only assigned to the insurance company. So it's got some special accounting concepts associated with it, and it's a way of managing capital on a long-term basis. So there's some advantages of that. Another advantage is if you own your own captive, you can start talking direct to reinsurance companies. And reinsurance companies only deal with other insurance companies. So you can access the reinsurance market, and associated with that, you've got lower premiums or different sort of transactional friction between lower transactional friction between each of those. So I just want to give you a snapshot as to sort of how some of the corporate insurance processes work. And so if you get involved in corporate insurance, large organisations, you'll start to come across this sort of structure. Just the sort of last thing about sort of insurance, really. There's Aon. They do a study of the cost of risk, and it's an insurance-based sort of approach, and they monitor how risk is measured, and the actual cost of risk per $1,000. So they're estimating that the cost of insurance and insurable risk is about $4.25 per $1,000, which is for sort of industrial corporations or large corporations. Obviously, if you're insuring your car, it's probably a bit more than that. So other things they're looking at, sort of how people perceive insurance and risk management. Now, there is a survey report which I think I've included as in some of the reading, but what the point they're making is that risk, the cost of risk, is not just about insurance. It goes wider than that, and I don't sort of want to go into that in too much detail. Okay. All right. In summary, there's some good reading on this stuff. I would suggest you take a look at the KPMG sustainability reporting, and I think it should be in it should be in the study guide, I think. If not, there's a link to it. Sustainability reporting. So that's sort of, I would certainly try and consolidate what I've thrown at you today. I've really sort of just cut across the surface, but to summarise, I would guess in terms of sustainability, it's the three pillars. So we're looking at economic, we're looking at society. Was that social? Environment. Yeah. Now, Amcor was cutting it in slightly different ways, but those are really the sort of the three core areas to think about. And it's a communication report for stakeholders, who are different to shareholders as such. In terms of insurance, I would sort of summarise the insurance part of it in that insurance is only one tool for risk treatment. There's lots of other risk treatments or risk control measures that are available, and that there are some key differences between the way you buy insurance as an individual and the way you buy insurance as a corporation. I think it's important to understand those subtle differences and the types of products that you buy, and what things you can cover if you're insuring sort of more industrial or commercial ventures. Okay. All right. Now there was someone came up and asked me about contacting companies for the assignment and who to speak to, and I just wanted to just share that with you. Okay. One good spot, one good place to look for if you're struggling to get a company is local councils are quite good places to talk to if you're looking to have someone friendly to chat to and not too big. Government departments, Victorian government departments and agencies are another. Just demonstrating, all the government departments have to include an attestation statement in their annual reports now. So it basically says that they need, here's one, this is from the annual report of Department of Education in Victoria. I certify that we have risk management processes in place consistent with the Australian standard and the internal control system that enables the executive to understand, manage and satisfactorily control risk exposures. So if you're looking for an organisation, I would certainly look for any organisation in Victoria Government that is producing an annual report. They will need to have a risk management framework in place. So if you're struggling, there's about 150 of them, I think. So that's a good place to start. The only other thing, but are there any questions? Anybody got any other questions on assignment 2? I don't know if you guys are making headway on that. Any thoughts? You're all happy with that? You're all on track? Okay. If you're thinking about contacting a company and you haven't done so yet, certainly get stuck into that as soon as you can. It takes a while to get appointments in people's diaries. On assignment 1, I know you're keen to get your results. Results will be should be available by Saturday. I just had a meeting with Venura just before I came in here today. And he's pretty much finished the marking. He's putting a spreadsheet together which is going to load up onto DSO for you to have a look at. Overall, well done everybody. Great job. I think marks average between for off-campus students, this is out of 10, between 8 and 9 for off-campus students, and for on-campus students they're about 6 to 7. All right. So that's just a guide. Now I'm not saying that you scored it between those marks. I don't know where you scored individually, but that's just some of the feedback I got from Venura. Now this is out of 10. Now it's not happy. Now there is some feedback, I guess, that I'm keen to share with you as to sort of why some groups didn't score as well as others. I guess one of the things that came through was the group's material wasn't really well connected. The presentation was kind of didn't fit with the paper, and some of the appendices didn't really connect with other parts of it, so that there was stuff that was really good perhaps in the appendix which should have also been referred to in the main paper or in the presentation. So it's about sort of I guess a quality control or a review of the whole paper, of the team effort, before sending it in, and making sure that the whole thing fits together nicely. So I think there's probably a bit of marks loss associated with that. In some of the, I think this is more so actually with a lot of the on-campus students, there was a tendency to really talk about risks in terms of types of risks and not individual risks, in that people were talking about financial risks, or they were just talking about other sort of market risks and these types of things. What we were looking for was specific risks. We're not just interested in just the groupings of risk. And I know in finance that's often the approach. But we're really looking at what are the specific risk issues. Now, so we look at the specific risk issue first, and then once we've identified that, then we can put a tag on it and say, well, this is a financial risk. Instead of just going, well, what are all our financial risks, and then drilling into that, let's look at what are our objectives first, set the context, and identify the things which can affect the achievement of those objectives, and define those risks, and then we can put a tag on them as to what type of risks they may be down the track. So try to think more in terms of what are our objectives and what could influence the achievement of those objectives, meaning the risks, and then put a tag on those and say, well, this is a finance risk, or this is a market risk, or this is an environment risk, or whatever it is, rather than saying, well, let's just focus on our environment risk. Because if you're just looking at what are our finance risks and then we're going to have a look at what are our market risks, what you're doing is you're taking a silo approach, which is what ERM is trying to get away from. We're trying to break those silos down. So that's, I guess, one of the key messages that I've seen sort of coming up. So try to avoid that sort of silo-based risk approach. Other sort of things that what have we got here? There was a lot of Vanessa sort of commented that you guys have done some really good research, but that research wasn't really reflected in the paper, or there was a disconnect, and maybe that's coming back to some of the working as a team type of stuff. Particularly with assignment 2, what we're really keen to see from you is for you to reflect the hard work and the research you've done. So if you've had interviews or you've collected information from organisations, include that in the appendix and refer to that when you're making your conclusions or you're making talking about your findings. So that's really sort of just a quick snapshot as to the overview as to assignment 1. Any questions or comments at this stage? No? Okay. All right. Well, thanks very much. I think the assignments should be available for collection. Vanura will put a message on DSO in the next... I'm not sure when he's going to set that up. Maybe next week or something like that. But the marks will be posted soon. See you next week. Hãy subscribe cho kênh Ghiền Mì Gõ để không bỏ lỡ những video hấp dẫn.